Okay, with the new regulations that have just been announced, open water swimming is back on, the lakes are open so we can get outside and swim, which for many of us who haven't had access to a pool for nearly 9 weeks, this is the best news. So I thought I would share with you all my top tips and tricks for open water swimming. Okay, so we're at the lake today. We've officially been allowed to do unlimited exercise outside and travel to where we want to swim. So the lakes are open. First open water swim of the year. Bright and early. It's going to be pretty cold in there, but I'm really excited to just do some exercise outside. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be not too cold and looking forward to getting in. Tip number 1, acclimatisation. So many people have a lot of anxiety around open water swimming, particularly with the cold and the darkness. It's really alien compared to swimming in a pool. So my top tips around this are just trying to get in the water nice and slowly, getting used to the temperature, slowly allowing some water into your wetsuit so you can get a feel for the water. Slowly getting your face under, just getting used to having your head submerged, the darkness, and having your face in that cooler water. It is pretty cold, but it is pretty cold. I feel like my face is numb actually. It's like really hard to move your mouth because it's gone numb. Treading water, just getting yourself happy and familiar before you actually start swimming. And sometimes I find if the water is really cold, I'll get my face in to begin with, but then I'll kind of do a more of a water polo style stroke to begin with, and then ease my face into the water as I get going and I get more comfortable. Okay, tip number 2 is sighting. Now, I try and time my sighting with my breathing, and there's several ways you can do this. In very choppy conditions, I sometimes recommend doing a water polo style stroke, just so you've got enough time to get your head up and actually see where you're going. But if it's a bit calmer, then you can really time it with your breathing. So I tend to sight quite often to make sure that I'm not going the wrong way. So I would typically breathe and then move my head to the front to look. Or you can do it the other way where you look and then turn your head to breathe. So definitely like to time it with my breathing so it doesn't interrupt your stroke, make your legs sink, and you can keep going forward as you sight. Another tip for sighting is sometimes it can be difficult to see the buoys in the water. So I like to do a bit of a recce swim if possible and actually spot landmarks on the water surface or further away around the water's edge, so that you actually know that's in line with a buoy and it's easier to sight than sighting lower down, particularly if it's sunny and there's a lot of glare on the water. Okay, tip number 3 is based around the open water start. Now typically we would have a mass start, which obviously isn't going to be possible to practice right now with the different social distancing regulations in place. However, you can still practice the principles of an open water start. Now typically we'd have a deep water start or a land-based start. So for the deep water start, you need to practice sculling on your front with your hands out and doing a slight leg kick to keep your legs up. And as soon as that gun goes, you want to be moving forward, so getting your legs kicking before the start goes. I also find this works really well because it means people don't want to get so close to you when you're doing a mass start. The other type of start is a land-based start, where normally you'll be running in on the beach or on the edge of the lake and getting into the water. So you definitely want to practice that because it can be quite tricky. Sometimes there's a lot of rocks and stones about, so you want to kind of have an idea of where they are so you don't hurt your feet on the way in. And then practicing that kind of wading through the water and getting yourself going. Sometimes people like to add in some butterfly strokes just to get through the water quicker and get away so you're out of that mass. But yeah, there's not going to be any practicing of mass starts for a while, but you can still practice the 2 different race starts. Okay, tip number 4 is based around drafting, which again with the current times and social distancing may be difficult to practice unless you're with someone from your own household. However, I will run through the basic principles of drafting. There are 2 ways that you can draft. You can either draft on the hip or the toes of the swimmer in front of you. Now the general principle around drafting is it makes it easier for you as you're getting a bit of a toe around the open water. Now when swimming on the hip, I found that you actually can slow each other down, so it will slow down the general pace, but it will feel easier for you to hang with the swimmer in front. If you swim on the toes of the swimmer in front, all you have to do is kind of watch for the bubbles and follow their feet, but you want to make sure that you trust the swimmer in front is going the right way, so I wouldn't recommend not sighting just to double check you're going in the general right direction. However, drafting will make your life a lot easier and you will tend to be able to swim with slightly stronger swimmers if you can get into that draft, so definitely a win-win. Okay, tip number 5 is based around having a higher stroke rate for open water. I often find having a higher cadence and higher tempo of stroke rate works really well in the rough conditions of the sea or windy conditions in a lake. It gives you more opportunity to catch the water, and if you're breathing between every 3 to 4 strokes, it gives you more opportunity to sight. My main thing with having a high stroke rate is making sure that it's not too fast that you're actually rushing the catch and not getting the pull of the water, but you're somewhere in that middle ground. Now there's tons of ways to practice this, and I often like to go over and above exaggerating that high tempo and high cadence stroke rate. So you often see me in a warm-up doing really fast arms just to get used to having that high stroke rate, but it's definitely worth a try to see if it benefits you. Okay, tip number 6 is based around equipment. Now it may seem fairly obvious, but getting a good fitting wetsuit is key for open water swimming. Now there's tons of wetsuits out there, but my personal choice is the Roka Maverick X2, which is their brand new wetsuit. I've just found it gives me loads of flexibility around the shoulder. I feel nice and buoyant in the water and feel like I can actually get into my normal stroke inside a wetsuit, which some people do struggle with. So definitely experiment with different wetsuits if you can. Currently during this time it's also pretty cold in the water in the UK, so there are things like a thermal wetsuit that you can get, and these just make the whole experience just that much nicer. There's also things like a neoprene cap, gloves and boots for your feet that you can get just to give you that extra warmth, and again they just make the whole open water experience so much nicer. There are also tons of goggles on the market. Goggles are super important depending on the different conditions, so if you've got glare in the water, a foggy day with low visibility, different goggles will give you more visibility, so I often will experiment with having mirrored goggles, clear goggles or goggles for low lighting. So again, Roka has a whole range of different goggles that you can look at for different conditions, so definitely recommend having a look at those. So it may sound obvious, but there's a set way to put on a wetsuit to get the most out of it when you're racing and also give it longevity so that you're not kind of tearing the wetsuit when you put it on. Some people like to put plastic bags over their feet to help slide the wetsuit up and over their feet. Once you have the wetsuit on, I recommend bending forward slightly and trying to pull the wetsuit up from where it slightly rolls on your tummy, and then you will get a bit more movement around your neck area so you can breathe freely. Once you've done this, I recommend pulling the sleeves up nicely so that you have more material around the shoulder area, and this will just give you a lot more mobility through that shoulder. Not all wetsuits are easy to zip up on your own, so if you have got a family member during this time that can help you zip up your wetsuit, then I recommend that as well. My final piece of equipment is a bit of a luxury item, but it does make the whole experience so much nicer to have a warm place to come back to get changed, maybe make a hot cup of coffee or even some soup just to warm up afterwards. If you haven't got that, then something like a dry robe where you've got your own little personal changing pod really helps to get dry and get changed afterwards. Tip number 7, my final tip for open water swimming, is based around hygiene and keeping yourself safe. Obviously during these times you want to stay as healthy as possible, so my top tips once you've finished your swim are to use some kind of hand wash or hand sanitizer to clean your hands. If you can shower off with clean water, then I definitely recommend doing so, or having a shower as quickly as possible after your swim. Now there's a bit of a myth that drinking flat Coke actually kills germs, and as an open water swimmer this is what we were told to do. However, I think having some kind of strong mouthwash to swill out in your mouth and in your throat is going to work just as well to kill those germs and make sure that you stay a happy and healthy open water swimmer.
Life is like
Okay, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed our Team Charles-Barclay open water tips. If you enjoyed this video, then you may like our previous video on lockdown updates. And as always, make sure to click to subscribe to our channel for future content.